Hey guys, how we doing? Welcome back to the channel. I got a viewer request here from a subscriber. He wanted me to go over some chains and my opinions, pros and cons, what I think about full house versus skip chain, and what I do, why I use what I use, and all of that. So on the right here, I've got a square ground 3/8 skip chain that is just hammered. I mean, this thing is just beat. So a little story behind that one is I had it on one of my McCullochs. My son had brought in a bunch of wood that came from the town, some massive pine trees, and they were just looking for a place to unload them. So I took them, and we were cutting them up and you know, cutting some boards on our band mill and stuff like that. And I got into the butt log, and it was knotted up and stuff. So I said, well, we'll just turn that into fire pit fuel. Started cutting that up, and about 10 inches into, you know, a 36-inch diameter butt log, there was a steel eye bolt inside this tree. Obviously placed there many, many years ago, and the tree grew around it. So, excuse me. So that's a little backstory on that chain and why it's destroyed. But yeah, so next to it on the left, I've got a full house chain, also 3/8 full chisel, not a square ground, just a conventional round file. And this came off of the 72cc Amazon saw. And I've since swapped that bar out to a 24-inch Forester, and with a different chain, and skip chain actually. So one of the reasons that I run skip chains is if I have a smaller saw with a bigger bar, like say one of my McCullochs, I've got the 53 or 54cc one, and I've also got some 57cc ones. But on the smaller ones, if I want to run a longer bar, I can put a 24-inch skip tooth on it, and it allows me to run that saw and not really dog the saw down too much, because I'm not taking as many cuts. Okay, so that's one benefit to a skip chain. Another benefit is on a longer bar, I run a skip chain on my 28-inch bar that's on my 359, my ported 359. And I could actually, on that saw, I could probably get away with running a full house. It runs very, very well. But anyway, I do run a skip on it, and one of the nice things is there's less teeth to sharpen. Okay, so that's another benefit to having a skip chain. So you can run lower horsepower saw, and you have less teeth to sharpen. So yeah, that's what I do for some of my smaller saws. Now, a full house chain, the benefit to that is you're clearing more chips per feet of chain movement, right? So if you have a higher horsepower saw or a bigger saw, and you could pull a full house chain, there's really no reason to go to a skip other than if you don't want to have as many teeth to sharpen. But I think most people run full house on a bigger saw just because, you know, they're clearing wood as fast as they can. And I'll run that full house chain. Actually, one of the last videos I did, the triple nickel McCulloch, the 555, that had a full house 3/8 chain on it, and it pulled it okay on a 28-inch bar. But the one thing you have to be careful of is if I get too aggressive with these rakers and I start taking too big of a chip on that 57cc saw with a 28-inch bar and a full house chain, I'm going to kill it. Now, if you watch that video, you could hear that saw when I was deep in the cut. It was dogged down pretty good in the RPM. That saw would probably benefit greatly in that soft wood from a skip chain. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't clear as many chips, but I would also be higher in the RPM, and it may offset. I may be taking just as much wood with a skip chain, but higher up in the RPM. And that if that saw is singing, you know, I could be clearing just as much wood without dogging that thing down. Now, I did have a full house on that McCulloch. So as long as my chip depth didn't get too deep, it'll pull it. definitely would have been better with a skip chain. Now, cons of the skip chain. One of the bad things about a skip chain is in smaller diameter wood, you'll feel these teeth more. You'll feel a rough a bouncing in the cut when you get down to small diameter wood. Not so much with a full house because you have more teeth. If I'm limbing, cutting a top out of a tree that's on the ground and I'm getting the brush out of there and taking the small firewood and stuff, I'm not going to grab a saw with a skip tooth. It's just going to be unpleasant, unfun. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be kicking and grabbing and just it'd be miserable to run. So I'll use a smaller saw. Maybe with a 325 pitch chain or whatever. I have smaller saws that run 3/8 full house. I'll use that because you'll get a smoother transition from tooth to tooth in a smaller diameter wood. So those are some of the benefits. Some of the cons. I will say that you can tune your chain pretty much for what you're cutting. Okay. The only thing you're never really going to get away from is this big a gap in smaller diameter wood. But making a low horsepower saw pull a full house chain, it can be done, but you got to make sure your chip is not too thick. Okay. You just got to be careful because if it gets too thick, it's just going to dog the saw down and kill it. But those are my experiences between full house and skip chain, and some of what I think are benefits versus cons, and hopefully this explains what my viewer was asking. So hopefully it answered questions for him. Thanks for watching, guys.